Targeting specific muscles. So for example, people often want to target the rear delt, back part of their shoulder, or the upper part of the chest, or they want to bring out their abs or their calves. And this isn't really rocket science. It's basically just train that muscle more than you're training the other muscles. But that can get a little bit complicated when you get down into the specifics, because there's a lot of different reasons why you might have one muscle that's lagging behind another muscle. And the first one is just genetics. You might not be built in the first place to have massive rear delts, whereas somebody else could just do a generic shoulder exercise and they find their rear delts pop up, or a generic rowing exercise and they find their rear delts pop up and their shoulders look huge. And other people can do lots of targeted work on the rear delt, but it only makes a marginal difference. And that's just variation in how human beings present. Some people have blonde hair, some people have black hair, some people have massive shoulders, some people find it hard to get massive shoulders or calves or biceps or whatever. So if one body part of yours is disproportionately smaller than the other body parts, it's likely that you're going to have to do an extra amount of work and actually maintain that extra amount of work in order to keep the proportionality that you have in your mind. And usually my answer to that is, I would much rather you're just a muscular, fit, lean version of yourself. And if that means that you're not perfectly proportioned and you look like a superhero comic, that's not the worst thing in the world. Because even just looking like a fitter, leaner, more muscular version of yourself, you're not going to be so wildly disproportioned that it doesn't still look pretty good. So worrying about the specifics of this or that muscle matters a lot less than just looking generically muscular and healthy. And 99% of the alpha that you're going to get out of that is just from generally looking fit and feeling fit as well. Let's not forget that part. The second detail that might be getting in the way is your exercise technique and kind of imbalances in the way that you move. Now, people make a big deal out of muscle imbalances, and in reality, almost everyone has some sort of muscle imbalance. If you have a dominant hand, if you write with one hand but you don't write with the other hand, if you prefer to pick up a bag with one hand over the other hand, you're going to have more muscle on one side than the other, and that's fine. That's a totally normal way that the human being is put together. So don't overstate muscular imbalances. You don't need to train every part of your body so that everything's perfectly symmetrical, unless you literally do it for a living and you're a bodybuilder and you have people judge your body on stage for a living. But with that being said, if the way that you move when you're doing exercise movements biases certain muscles over others, it can cause some muscles to grow while leaving other muscles behind. The biggest example of this I usually see is when people are doing pressing movements, they tend to shrug their shoulders, move their shoulders forwards like this. So making sure that those shoulders stay back ensures that you're not giving the front part of your shoulder more work across the workout, preventing your chest from growing and putting a disproportionate amount of work on the front of the shoulder. So setting up your movements and learning how to move in a way which targets the muscle that you're actually trying to work instead of moving out of position is going to be the way that we avoid those balances that come from overtraining due to poor technique. So learn to move right. And then finally, quite often, people just don't train the muscles that they complain about not seeing. People will be like, oh, why do I have small calves? But they never train their calves. I train my calves 4 times a week because I have long legs and I feel like it makes my legs look disproportionately skinny. So like I said at the very beginning, I just make sure that I train them a lot. And then that way, they won't go out of proportion and I can target that muscle and bring them up so that they're proportionate to the rest of my body. Because remember, the answer to every question is to stop asking questions until you start doing things in the real world. And if you're not even training the muscle that you're asking about, that's probably the best place to start. So if you're saying, oh, how do I get my rear delts to come up? Do a rear delt exercise. And only once you're already doing that rear delt exercise and they're still not coming up, maybe switch up your technique. Make sure that you're actually targeting the muscle that you're trying to hit. You're not accidentally shrugging your shoulders too much. You might need to tweak the position of your shoulders to hit the rear delts a little bit more. And then also, maybe if you look at yourself as a whole and stop just focusing on all these individual parts, that shift in perspective might make you realize that actually, if you're overall pretty fit and muscular, The fact that this one muscle isn't quite perfectly symmetrical with the rest of your body isn't actually that big a deal anyway, and I wouldn't worry too much about it in the grand scheme of things. Just train hard, get fit, build some muscle, and enjoy having a strong, fit body. And as you train, and as you get that body, and as you do things in the real world, you might find that you come up with some more questions. And if you do have those questions, please send them my way, and I'll try and answer them in one of these posts. See ya!